Good Saturday morning to everybody, and welcome to Legal Notes with Mary Ann Sharon and Ned Barron. I'm Gary Byron. We were having a conversation last week. I knew we ran out of time. I think we were talking about supporting your parents in the community. Is that right? From last week, I know it was a week ago. But...
I mean, certainly last week, I think we were talking about home care.
And right.
If you can provide your parent the care in their own home, you know, and what that can entail and who you hire. And so today, you know, Ned and I were thinking, well, what if their own home is not a possibility?
Well, can they come into your home? And I guess that comes down to, would you want them in your home? Or B, let's say you do. Let's say you want mom or dad or whomever it is that you're talking about in your own home. Are you equipped? Are you the right person to care for them? Because I got to tell you something. I would have my mom in a heartbeat. I really would. I don't know, however, if I could give her the care that she would need. And I guess the only way to answer that is it depends on what issues we're talking about that this, you know, that mom or in some cases dad is dealing with, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of it, I think some people have, I don't want to say a romantic notion, but there is certainly this familial obligation and love that, you know, where we want very much to be able to, I don't want to say to do for our parents what they had done for us, right? And of course you want to be able to take care of it, but reality can set in and the reality can be a lot different. Parents are not children. Parents will always be your parent. Parents will always tell you what to do, even in a stage where they may not have all of their faculties. And so you really have to think long and hard. And there's so many other factors and the dynamic, you know, it can be an obstacle for sure. Especially
with, you have siblings, right? Would they be all fighting over this or not necessarily? Maybe like, go ahead.
That happens. You are correct.
Yeah, it's more the exception than the rule.
God bless you.
For a child that wants to do that. Because you have to think about, first of all, do you have the personality to be a caregiver? I mean, that's a really tough job.
Sure.
You know, especially even in professional caregivers, it's a tough job and they're being paid for it. If you're a child that's caring for a parent, it's in many ways a thankless job because the parent may not be able to express their thanks for the help they're getting. I mean, they may not even be able to understand that themselves because they could be frustrated that they're not living where they want to live. They don't want to live with their kid, right? They got rid of their kid, 30, 40 years ago, and now the kid's back, either the parents in the kid's house or the kids in the parents' house. So that dynamic is really tough in almost every circumstance. But there are cases where it's worked out really well. But you have to have the personality of the parent and the child and the rest of the family of that child all have to be on the same page. If not, conflict can ensue easily.
Yeah. I mean, does the parent, a lot of parents had jobs where, for example, they're up at 5 o'clock in the morning, right? They're up. That's their typical. They're up at 6. They're ready to have their breakfast. Lunch is by 11. They want dinner by 4:30, right? And if that's not your lifestyle and you have to change your lifestyle, what if you have to change your work hours? What if now you're going to be taking your parent to the doctors all the time or to their appointments so there's a lot of questions you have to answer. And you mentioned something that I think Ned and I have certainly seen is that if you have siblings, there's usually one that says, that is either expected to or will volunteer to take care of the parent. And then oftentimes we see that the other siblings are like, oh, I'm so glad you're taking this care of this job. And we never see them again. you know?
All right, so this is an interesting scenario. Yeah. It's kind of like the circle of life too, where mom took care of you. She wiped your butt. Now you're wiping hers. I mean, I don't mean to be so graphic, but it's cyclical, right?
Yeah.
And going back to the siblings or having your own life, are you not sacrificing your own vacations or your own time spent with family because mom or dad, whoever the parent that's living with you, has such required care. The other factor is they may come in at one level of care that's needed, and progressively over time, a year goes by, 2 years goes by, they've elevated the level of care that they need. So it's not at the original stages where, hey, I can handle this. Yeah. So at what point does the caregiver, the child in this case, I say child, obviously they're not child in age, but the subject's children, at what point do they say, I'm overwhelmed. Now, is this the time to now bring in the sibling, or is this the time to call one of those, companion facilities or services, I should say?
Well, I think as attorneys that we would like to focus on how we have helped and how we can help families to make that transition. Mm-hmm. And one of the best things to do is for parents and their children to come up with a plan before it's needed. So, for example, when parents are starting to get older and they know that they know that that's just the progression of life, that they're going to need assistance, that's probably the best time to put together a plan. And where we as attorneys get involved with that are with care plans. So basically, it's or care agreement where you have parents and a child who are entering into a contractual agreement. The child is agreeing to provide certain services, so many hours a week, all that. And what that does is that agreement allows also we can plan for, well, if there's increased needs, then we can put that into that care agreement. And so
what's really good about having something in writing is so that you have siblings, everyone in the family knows, right? So there isn't going to be, so we talked a little bit earlier about the parent-child dynamic. Well, what about sibling dynamic, right? So that's really, really important, because someone might say, you're taking control of mom and dad's finances. What are you doing with their money? What do you mean the money's all gone? You've spent it all. You just renovated your home and you made a lot of money. What are you coming to us for? I mean, there's so many things in terms of that dynamic that, when we draft these care agreements, there's that transparency. It's in writing. It's like, okay, mom is moving in with me. We have to do a bathroom renovation. We have to make the doors have to be widened to 36 inches so that she can have easy access with her walker eventually. Grab bars, there's things that have to be done to make it, user friendly for mom. Whose funds are going to be used for that? Is who's responsible for doing what? And then we can also, what I like to do, Ned does the same thing. We try to have a meeting with all of the family members if it's possible, if they're interested, because to say, okay, who's going to provide what care? I did that recently. I had all the siblings and the parent, mom, as the case may be, and it was a Zoom call, obviously, because of COVID, right? And we all kind of put together what each person was going to be responsible for. That cleared the air. Sometimes people go into
Can that
blindly.
cause family arguments, and do they get in heated discussions where I can't go along with this. I think you're the wrong person for that. I think you should stick to what you're good at, and that's cooking, and I'll take care. Oh, I'm just speaking hypothetically, but I mean, you can really see in front of your eyes not only the dilemmas but the inner workings of the dynamic of the family. And it must be difficult for you to kind of sit back and go, ooh, what if I want to get involved in this?
Well, especially when you are listening to, one of the siblings and you're basically extrapolating what their real issue is. So let's just say it's mom. Mm-hmm. Mom has limited assets, limited resources. Now mom's moving into one of the children's, not the one that's upset, one of the children's house where the renovations are going to have to be done. I mean, we've had clients where they put additions on to make a in-law suite, right? In-law suite and all that. Mm-hmm. And so the question, when you start hearing questions from a sibling such as, well, wait a minute, so after mom dies, then what happens to now the value of your house just got increased. and basically, and the subtext is, my inheritance now just got put into your house. How do I get that out?
Yeah.
And unfortunately for that person, and that it's not right. This is part of. I think that one thing that if I was talking to that sibling one-on-one, I would say, you have no idea what an immense responsibility it is to take a parent into your house. That the amount of time that is going to be needed to drive them to doctor's appointments, to make those doctor's appointments, to do all this stuff, that you don't understand that the value that
they should be able to keep.
Exactly.
For being compensated for their time and their efforts and their care, as you just articulated.
Right, and it just doesn't always involve that. Let's say it's the daughter, right? It doesn't always involve the daughter. It's the husband and the children, right? That the whole family that the parent has gone to live with, they're all part of that. And so it's, again, if you're not the one giving the care, you don't really have a clue what's involved in it. And so these care agreements that really we try to spell that out, right? Mm-hmm. To put it on paper to show, well, this is how many hours a week that this person is getting in care services from their daughter, say their child, or the child and their family.
And we learn really quickly if someone's in it for the money or not. In other words, when we start talking about, okay, you do know that when you undertake this, you are going to be driving your parent to the doctor's appointments. You are going to do her grocery shopping. You are going to be making sure that her room is clean and that it's accessible to her, and provide her with opportunities for socialization. You are going to be doing all of those things. Sometimes we see very clearly that the child might have some financial struggles, some financial need, and think that having mom move in with them and taking mom's Social Security and or pension is going to be the answer to all their financial problems, and think that all they have to do is warehouse mom. And so when we have these meetings, certainly Ned and I have done it long enough, we can tell. You can just tell the instant they start talking that this is
there's
not...
questions that they ask, or there's points that they ask. So how much
can I charge?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Now, how do I get the Social Security paid directly to me?
Yes. Absolutely. And
how do I get on all the bank accounts and the investment accounts
But are these meetings taking place early enough that mom and or dad are still somewhat coherent and lucid? And
sometimes, right? We like them to come to us early enough,
Like, when is a good time, then?
Well, how old are we, Ned? No. Perhaps maybe we should do it now. No.
Well, no, but it's a valid question. When? All right. Well, I guess there's two ways I can ask you this. What is the age of your average client who contacts you for this purpose, number one? And number two, at what age would you prefer to see them approach you?
Well, every case is different. Every person is different, because do you have existing healthcare issues? Are you active? It runs the gamut. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could have a client who's 70 years old that is needing help, but you can also have one that's 85 that is just starting to think about needing help. It's really, it really is. It's individual.
And it's the personality of the family. Some parents are never going to talk to you about these issues, right? Until they've broken their hip, fallen and slipped on the ice, and now it forces their hand. So, I would like to say, in some kind of range, like probably 70s, right? Like, before they really have a lot of need, but they understand that this need is coming up. But that's just a generalization. Both Ned and I have seen people in their 90s who are amazingly, with it. And we've seen people in their 60s who need care, right? So, it just depends. But yeah.
How often do you offer your opinion, whether or not it's being asked, where, oh yeah, I'll take care of mom, and you say to yourself, you're in your little voice in your mind that says, for the love of God, if you do anything, you can't even take care of yourself. You certainly cannot take care of an elder person with special needs. Is that overstepping a boundary? Do you just not stay out, or is that part of your job? Or sometimes that's tough love. You have to You once told me weeks ago, your client is mom or dad, right? It's not their kids necessarily. You're looking out for mom or dad's best interest. So therefore, I interpret that as you are the voice for the people who cannot speak clearly for themselves or even fight for themselves. So even if it's sadly up against their own children, you need to protect your client. So would you take that initiative and defend that person and say something maybe not in the way I just, said, but maybe in a more tactful, professional, legal way where this may not be the right thing for you?
Have you done that, Ned? Have you had to? I've had to have some difficult conversations, but
I guess their heart's in the right place.
Maybe.
But thanks, but no thanks. Well, right, maybe. But let's assume for the sake of this scenario that it is. Their heart is in the right place, but they can barely take care of themselves, let alone an elder.
From my perspective, if I feel that the person's heart is in the right place and this is really what they want to do, but I can sense the level of overwhelmment, that's probably at the time when I would say there are programs out there that can help you provide services so that you don't, fall down to, you know what I mean? So that you don't lose your ability to take care of your parents. And so so I would use that as an entree. If I'm trying to soft pedal the truth that you may not be the best person for the job, I would talk about like the Home Care for Elders program as an example.
Let's talk about that in just 1 second here. Folks, you are listening to Legal Notes with Mary Ann Sharon and Ned Barron. I'm Gary Byron. Okay, let's talk about home care for elders then.
Do you want to talk about it? I'll talk about it. You want to talk about it?
How about you? You can both talk about
Mary.
it. We have a few minutes here. We can both get you chiming in.
So Home Care for Elders is a program that is run by the state, and you have you call an entity that's called CCCI, Connecticut Community Care, Inc., and they will do an assessment of your parent to see what the parent's needs are, and if it's like just homemaking, companionship, transportation, things like that. And it's a sliding scale based on the individual's income. So it's not the caregiver's income, it's your parent's income. So it would be, we were talking about a mother, so the mother's Social Security and possibly pension. And they would provide, the state has agencies who provide care, who would come into your home. So while you were working, for example, or while you had other things to do. And so that is how I would address it in that circumstance. I'm like, let's call them. Let's have an assessment done. Let's see how many hours your mom qualifies for to help you so that you can do what you can do best as being a daughter to your mother and help her. And so that's...
What happens when you're not home, though? When you're at work? I mentioned vacations a moment ago. I guess you can theoretically take mom with you. But, when you got to go to work...
Well, even with vacations or work, for vacations, for example, you can hire, a respite care. So have someone either come into the house for a week to take care of them, or there are nursing homes or facilities where you could actually take someone there for a week or 2 weeks for respite. So it's a short period of time. The facility knows it's not long term, so they're going to get good care while you're gone. So that's one way to take care of that. But with the Home Care for Elders program, that one of the things to kind of want to focus on is what kind of services could be provided. And they could be things such as, bathing or helping them, with their grooming, or helping them just with their getting dressed, or
toileting, those type of things that a child doesn't necessarily really want to be able to have to do for a parent, and a parent doesn't want to do that for a child. And that care can be provided during the day, for example, while you are at work. You may have to modify your work hours, depending on the number of hours of care that your parent requires. But that's an option, and it's a really viable option. Not a lot of people know about it because we always think of care that has to come into the house as being very expensive. And so, the state provides these programs because they know that it is less expensive to keep somebody in a home than to have to put them in a nursing home, right? Nursing home is what, $14,000 to $18,000 a month. So if the state wants to support, keeping people in a home, because once you run out of money, the state is what's going to be paying for your skilled care. So the state pays, our tax dollars pay for that. So it can be really expensive, and the state has done lots of studies to figure out that it is better to support, and that's why the home care program was put in place and has become very popular.
Is the caregiver, let's say it's a child of of mom or dad, there's payment that they receive. We were talking about that a moment ago. You want to make sure that their heart is in it for the right purposes. How much are people receiving, or is there a sliding scale? Does it depend on the level of care that mom or dad needs, and any of that?
It really, that calculation involves all of that. One of the reasons why we also like to see care agreements in place is because if that parent who has been writing checks to that child over an extended period of time, whether it's for their care, whether it was for doing the renovations to the house and all that if that parent eventually does need nursing care and that parent runs out of money and needs Title 19, so Medicaid, to pay for that care, the state is going to be going through their bank statements with a fine-tooth comb. And when they see that all these checks are being written to daughter or son, red flags are going to go up, because the state's concerned that they were giving away the money to their child to qualify themselves for Title 19, because now they have no money left. So one of the reasons for the care agreement is to protect the parent and the child from the state trying to recoup funds. And if there is that care agreement in place, it is a way to sorry.
So it definitely prevents the state from disqualifying someone. But there are rates that you can charge. So just because you think you're worth $50 an hour, if a caregiver only gets, say, $20 an hour, you can't charge that $50, even in a care agreement. Ned and I would never put a dollar amount for an hour, for hourly care for that.
All right. So when someone is sitting, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
I wouldn't, because the state has published rates, Ned.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you wouldn't put any rate on there.
No, I wouldn't put the $50 rate.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I thought you were saying
Did you see that look? You saw that look he gave me.
I don't think he quite heard you, though. That was. But now that you've clarified, he's in complete agreement.
There you go.
Yes.
And I forgot what I was going to say. That tells you how off the cuff this show really is, there, folks. I know what I was going to say. So, I mean, let's go back to somebody having an appointment with you. Let's see. Somebody hears these shows.
Yeah.
And they're taking notes, and they're checking out your website, and they're listening to the following week and the following week, and they're saying, how comprehensive is this initial consultation with you? I mean, realistically, how long does somebody need to set aside for not only for their meeting with you, but is there more than one meeting with you before you're all is said and done and papers are signed?
I think a minimum of an hour. I think an hour.
Okay, that's not too bad.
is fair to. I mean, sometimes what happens is we get an initial call and say, hey, I'm thinking of taking care of my parent, want to have a conversation with you about it. And Ned and I might assign homework to them before we even have that meeting. What are you thinking about? Is the parent moving in with you? How much does your parent have for assets? Do we have, how, you know what I mean? So we might have a bunch of questions. What other siblings do you have? How many other people are involved? And then we would set up a time and to have a conversation. And depending on really what the purpose of the call is, then we've been doing it long enough. We have a good idea of how much time someone needs to set aside for an initial. And then if we are going to be drafting documents, whether it be power of attorneys, a care agreement that we were talking about today, or some other things, then we'll know what the next step would be and where we would go from there. And further meetings.
Yeah, and those care agreements they're not cookie cutter documents. That part of it does involve a lot of follow up, I think.
Absolutely.
Where we can have that initial meeting, but one of the things that we also try to do in those meetings is to educate them as to, because the child might not have a clue how much time they're going to need to spend, and the parent may not may not know either. So the bottom line is that we need to spend as much time as possible to come up with a comprehensive agreement so that both parties, the parent and the child, are on board with what exactly are you providing and how much is that going to cost.
And then whether the parent is willing to actually sign the care agreement, knowing all of that information.
But it sounds like education is what takes up the bulk of the time. I mean, how can anybody sign any document on anything if they're not well informed, And let's face it, folks, this is not something that's necessarily discussed every day. It's not common information, despite the fact that it should be. That's why we exist doing this show. But let's face it, a lot of people aren't that familiar. So maybe spending more than an hour. It doesn't necessarily have to be all at once, but you can break that up, I'm thinking.
Yep.
Folks, sure. and this is, like I was just saying a moment ago, this is why this show exists and why it's so important. And we hope that you enjoy it and you continue to listen each and every Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, and tell your friends and family about it as well. If you would like more information on this very topic, it's very easy to obtain that information. Just simply go to the website, charteroaklaw.com. Once again, charteroaklaw.com. I always tell people, you probably already have a few questions, and you might get them answered on the website. It also may spark other questions that you may want to jot down. And when you do so, you can give them a phone call, 860-570-1229. Again, 860-570-1229. They have locations in Bloomfield, Danbury, and Norfolk. You can also email the show, by the way. Not only the show, you can also email them personally. If you don't feel comfortable calling them, simply email them. It's legalnotes@charteroaklaw.com. Once again, legalnotes@charteroaklaw.com. For Mary Ann Sharon and Ned Barron, I'm Gary Byron. Thank you so much for listening. Until next Saturday morning, have a good one, everybody.